2 weeks ago,
searching for the Beaumonts.
something extraordinary happened.
We found a feature.
That site warrants further investigation.
What really happened to the Beaumont children?
2 girls, 1 9, 1 7, and a little 4-year-old boy.
Somebody very confident.
Take their money.
Leave them vulnerable.
The children walked across the road.
They vanished.
That's horrific.
Horrible.
Australia's deepest mystery.
Remember the grave we dug in that scary fella?
Now the biggest break in 5 decades.
It's a huge finding.
A year-long investigation.
It really is amazing.
A trail of evidence that leads to this site.
They're going to open up the whole area.
And this man.
He was a sexual deviant.
Like a monster.
A son names his father.
How many shots did you hear? 4. I got goosebumps.
Finally, we're going to find what happened to them.
Is this where the Beaumont children are buried? A 7 News investigation.
On Australia Day, 1966, Jane, Anna and Grant Beaumont came here to do what Australian kids relish, just a few hours on the beach at the end of the long summer school holidays. They never returned home. It is Australia's greatest mystery, a crime that destroyed a family. For the last year, 7 News and a team of forensic specialists has reinvestigated Australia's greatest cold case, and we've discovered startling new evidence pointing to the killer and what could be the burial site of Jane, Anna and Grant. Very soon, we may, just may, know what really happened to the Beaumont children.
January 26, 1966. And Adelaide's searing summer heat is almost unbearable.
It's a hot summer's day. It's Australia Day.
It was hot as heck, really hot. In fact, stinking hot.
A day that's already soaring towards 40 degrees. At around 10 a.m, 9-year-old Jane Beaumont, her 7-year-old sister Anna and Grant, their 4-year-old brother, are about to catch the bus to the beach.
Little kids back then were innocent. We were allowed to have fun. We could sleep with our doors open. We could watch telly out the back. We could do whatever we wanted to. It was safe.
Their dad Jim is away, up north in Snowtown on business. Jim's wife Nancy gives their eldest daughter Jane enough small change to cover bus fares and lunch.
She watched them walk to the bus stop just down the street. Jane would have made sure the kids got on the bus safely. She would have got on last, got the purse out and paid.
Glenelg Beach is less than 2 kilometres away.
No, it wasn't the first time that the children had caught that bus and went down to the beach by themselves.
And it was so innocent to go down the beach. We all did it. You just had to be home before the street lights came on. And Jane, Anna and Grant were exactly the same.
Jenny Muirhead, Jane's best friend, often joined Jane and her siblings on their adventures, but not this day.
She was really quite amazing, you know. She could catch a bus anywhere around Somerton, Brighton, Glenelg. She would have herded them off the bus. She would have carried Grant and put him on her hip, which she always did, and then put him down once he got down the steps of the bus. Went straight to the beach. They would have gone straight in the water. She would have told Grant he's not allowed to go past the top of his bathers, because that's what she used to say to him. She used to joke about, don't you get your belly button wet or I'll get cross at you. It would have sunbaked, kids would have built sandcastles. Yeah, it would have been just an average day, really.
It was a time of innocence, and it was a far simpler time for us and a far more innocent time for the state. It was really a good time.
Children went anywhere and everywhere. There was no fear of being abducted. It didn't happen.
But something did happen to the Beaumont children. Someone was watching Jane, Anna and Grant.
What they were doing was what I was doing, is what my brothers and sisters were doing, was what my school friends were doing. And it does upset me because that was my life. and they've gone.
Nancy Beaumont thought her 3 children would be home by 1 o'clock. Increasingly panicked, she waited as bus after bus returned from the beach without them. By mid-afternoon, she was joined by her husband.
He was a travelling salesman and he thought he'd give the children a surprise and get back early. So he got back only to be met by his wife Nancy, who stated that the children hadn't returned home from the beach.
After frantically searching the beach and nearby streets, Jim Beaumont went to the police.
Well, I think Mr. Beaumont reported them missing at about 5 or 6 o'clock. Though it was at least 6 hours before their disappearance was broadcast over the radio and over the TV.
Mostyn Matters was a young detective on duty at Glenelg Police Station when Mr. Beaumont arrived.
You know, as the hours went by, every hour went by, it became more and more concerned that something has happened to him.
The thing that I'd like to impress on you all is that everyone makes sure that they're familiar with the descriptions of the 3 missing children. That is absolutely important. And also make sure your friends are aware of the descriptions of these children. And also, if you have any new Australian friends, perhaps you can assist them in describing the children to them. 2 girls, 1 9, 1 7, and a little 4-year-old boy, and they have brown eyes.
Jim Beaumont now divided his time between the police, the search, and the public appeal.
What sort of a girl is Jane, the 9-year-old? Is she...
Oh, very intelligent, very intelligent. You've only got to tell her a thing once, and she always does what she's told, never to talk to any strangers on the beach. When she swims there, always in groups.
Be quite able to look after the other 2?
Oh, quite capable, quite capable.
It's one of those moments, you remember where you were when you were told that she had disappeared.
So the first thing, over here towards this ridge, right? You can break line now and come over.
I can remember sitting in front of the television and they were looking for her, Grant and Anna. And I can just remember thinking, being in panic. Jane, where are you? You know, you must be somewhere. You never thought that she would just disappear or someone would take her. But I kept on thinking, you know, she's such a sensible girl that she would get a message to someone.
Today is the 7th day that Jane, Anna and Grant Beaumont have been missing, and it's the 4th time that the police have searched this area of the Sandhills.
Initially, police thought there were 3 possibilities. The children had either been kidnapped, or were hiding, or they'd suffered a tragic misadventure like drowning or collapsing sand dune. Police volunteers scoured the beaches. It was the largest search in South Australian history, on land and on sea. At Glenelg Police Station, Mostyn Matters and his detectives were overwhelmed by people phoning or coming in with reported sightings.
We were only a small outfit. There was only a sergeant and 4 detectives there. There was a queue out the door, you know. They wanted to see us and for the information. And they all had to be interviewed.
And the children were actually seen standing here, were they, yesterday?
They were seen here by a woman yesterday. Well, we think it was them.
We're trying to do our best, but we couldn't possibly interview everybody that was coming to the station, and it was just impossible. Nothing was really organised like it should have been.
I think most people felt helpless. What happened to them?
Stormwater drains and sewers were opened and flushed.
You did lead the men this morning to this inlet into the manhole in the Broadway.
That's true.
Now, do you believe that the children are in this pipe? Do you think that there's a possibility they could be there?
No place was left unsearched. The local boat harbour was drained, a massive operation.
At the Patawalunga Boat Haven in Glenelg, South Australia, in what is the latest development and perhaps the most dramatic one yet, the haven is going to be drained and the police will then inspect it.
Dozens of police and cadets probed the waist-high mud.
We actually all held our breath while people looked for them, while the Patawalunga was dragged.
This is one of the jobs where they hope they don't have any luck whatsoever.
On and on it went. Surely, somewhere, somehow, they would find a scrap of clothing, a shred of evidence.
You know, everything that happened, we held our breath and thought, finally we're going to find what happened to them.
How's it going?
But each lead failed. The children had vanished. In November 1966, over 9 months since they were last seen, a local businessman flew the famous Dutch clairvoyant Gerard Croiset to Adelaide.
Now, that was a farce, no two ways about that.
Croiset claimed he'd had a vision of the Beaumont Children and arrived in Adelaide to a reception rivalling that given to the Beatles.
Do you hope that Dr. Croiset succeeds, Jim? Oh, well, I mean, that's his belief, and I really appreciate him coming over, I mean, to find the children.
I think it'd be very difficult for him to meet us. I think he's a very feeling man, and I think that his main objective is finding the children more so than talking to us, perhaps.
In my opinion, I have found the spot where the children are, or would be.
Where is that spot?
Where is that? Where I was this morning, near the wall of that storeroom where the children were last.
Where exactly is that?
Well,
that's Wilton Street, Somerton Park.
Yes. That is Wilton Street.
On the last day that he was due back to fly back, someone told him about this warehouse that had just recently been dug up and re-cemented. He said that's where they're buried. So off they all went down there again and dug it up.
Yes. Als ik dus zeg dat ze daar onder If I say they are buried there, I am sure.
Nothing was found.
Well, what can you say at this moment? I mean, we've been hanging on for 9 months and 14 days now, and, well, we just got to just wait and hope and pray.
Well, naturally, they were very upset, and because they were subjected to the crank calls that came, you know, letters and accusing them of taking the children and what have you and what have you.
It became a circus around them.
Oh, yes. They suffered a lot, they really did.
I don't believe that the children are dead, and I'll cling on to the hope until there's any evidence found otherwise.
As each month passed, each year came by, every anniversary, you know, they used to suffer. I know Nancy, she left the rooms where the children slept. They weren't touched. Everything stayed as it was. In case the children never came home, the place, their rooms and everything were all as they left them.
A few nights before she vanished, Jane Beaumont left her parents a note.
Dear Mum and Dad, I am just about to go to bed and the time is 9. I have put Grant's nappy on, so there is no need to worry about him wetting on the sheet. Grant wanted to sleep in his own bed, so one of you will have to sleep with Anna. Although you will not find the rooms in very good condition, I hope you will find them as comfortable as we do. Good night to you both, Jane. P.S. I hope you had a very nice time wherever you went. P.P.S. I hope you don't mind me taking your radio into my room, Daddy.
Jane was the custodian of her 2 siblings. She would do anything for them.
Late in the morning at Glenelg Beach, an elderly couple saw Jane, Anna and Grant playing with a tall man, whose description they later gave to police.
I believe that they'd met him before. It's not the first time they'd met the man. It was quite a friendly, it was almost like a parent playing with the children.
Jane carried an off-white purse and had been given enough coins by her mum for their bus fares and to buy lunch. The elderly couple reported that the man with the children said they'd lost their money.
Do you believe that was coincidental, or was that part of the plot?
It was the plot. It was the plan. Now you
take their money, leave them vulnerable,
of course, and then
come in as the White Knight.
Yep.
If your plan was to entice these children somewhere to get them away so you could do whatever it was you wanted to do, what better way than to remove the method of getting home and be able to offer them an alternative? They went willingly, I believe, from the beach with someone. They weren't dragged kicking and screaming away.
At around lunchtime, the children were seen again. They were about 100 metres from the beach when Tom Patterson, their local postie, saw them.
The spot where Mr. Patterson last saw the three Beaumont children. He was riding his bicycle down Mosley Street and he saw them standing right where I am. He stopped his bicycle just here. He said hello to them. Then he turned around the corner into Jetty Road and went down towards the post office.
The young Grant called out, "G'day, Mr. Postman," and he called back on him and they all waved to him.
Now, the children, after he passed by, the children walked across the road.
Across the road was a popular local bakery called Wenzel's Pie Shop. It would have been around here. And this is one of the mysteries of that day. Earlier at the beach, the children had lost their money. Yet Jane now pays for their lunch with a crisp £1 note, a note her mother had not given her when she'd left home.
The mother gave him 8 shillings and 6pence to get the lunch. Jane handed them a £1 note.
What did they buy with the £1 note?
The children bought cakes and a pie for the man. That's what they said, a pie for the man.
The kids said that. They were heard saying that.
Yes, they said it to the attendant at this shop.
Mm. That's when they disappear into thin air.
Yeah.
Have you been able to find an example anywhere in the world where 3 young children disappear and are never found again?
Certainly not 3 siblings. And certainly I've never heard of anything like that since.
How can 3 children be taken any great distance without being seen? It's never been done before. It's just never been done. So what happened to them? And where did they go? To me and to many others, they never left Glenelg.
Someone on the beach that day had purely evil intent. What do you believe happened to the Beaumont children on that Australia Day in 1966?
The person they were playing with, the man they were playing with, gained their confidence. And then from there they followed him. It was a Pied Piper.
What sort of person are we talking about here?
It's all about power and control, and this is a very bold thing to do. You know, it's no small feat to take 3 children from a very public place. Somebody very confident, very charismatic, somebody who probably lacks empathy for the victims, because somebody who's going to predate on children is not going to be somebody who's going to worry about their feelings or what they need. So we're talking a pretty cold, calculating person here.
No criminal case in Australia has attracted more suspects. As the years passed, one by one, these evil men fell under suspicion. Infamous child killer Derek Percy, linked to the deaths of 9 children. Convicted murderer and suspected serial killer James O'Neill. Anthony Munro, the scoutmaster and pedophile now in prison after his extradition from Cambodia. And one of the most depraved killers in Australian history, Bevan von Einem, convicted for the murder of 15-year-old Richard Kelvin. Von Einem is thought to be responsible for multiple killings in Adelaide in the late 70s and early 80s. Film taken during the search for the Beaumont children even shows a young man with a striking resemblance to von Einem watching on as police drag the boat harbour, although the identity of this man has never been verified. In the hunt for suspects, the net has been cast far and wide.
We're always looking at somebody that looked the part, but they don't look the part. They look like you and me, and in front of adults, they act really well. It's only in front of the children they don't.
The truth is you believe that the main suspect was hiding in plain sight.
Yes, and it's not the boogeyman. It's a person of influence, a person that's charismatic, a person usually in a position of power, of trust.
He's had to win them over to get them to go with him. So it tells you about him as a person. If he looked scary, then they're not going to have gone with him.
In 1966, a police artist drew this image of the man witnesses saw speaking to Jane, Anna and Grant at Glenelg Beach.
He was about 6 feet tall.
Around the 6 foot tall, athletic.
Fair wavy hair, a longish face and a high forehead.
Bearing a close resemblance to the police sketch is this man, Harry Phipps.
It's startling, the resemblance in my mind.
A millionaire factory owner and father of two, Phipps lived close to both the beach and the bakery, where the kids bought themselves cakes and a pie for the man.
Considering it was a hand-drawn sketch, I don't think you could have got it closer had you been looking at Harry and drawn it.
The more I look at Harry, of all the people who've been suggested over the years, and there have been many, I think he is the most likely to be the actual offender.
This interview relates to IFB file 080595WM between Bill Hayes and Hayden, Haydn Phipps. Hayden, as you're aware, I've been asked to speak to you in relation to certain matters involving the disappearance of the Beaumont children. Do you understand what we're going to talk about?
Yes, I do.
Not long before he died, Hayden Phipps, Harry's eldest son, gave this interview to former South Australian police detective Bill Hayes. Hayden was 15 when the Beaumont children disappeared. His father was in his 40s.
How tall was he?
Oh, he was in the region of 6 foot.
The full contents of this interview have never been publicly revealed.
Well, did you see them talking to Harry?
Yeah. I saw them coming into the backyard from the country house. They came to Dad's car. I think they went inside the house, and that's it.
Did you hear what they were saying?
No, it was too far away.
Hayden's decision to speak came at the urging of his second wife, Angela.
When did Hayden first talk to you about the Beaumont children?
We were watching television one night and an item came on about the Beaumonts, and he said to me, I always thought Harry had something to do with that.
You remember Australia Day 1966?
Yeah.
As a reason why? All right, but in January...
It was a real hot bastard of a day. As hot as hell, it must have been 40-something plus.
It's the day that the Beaumont children went missing.
Yeah.
They were last seen in the Collie Reserve.
Collie Reserve is a stone's throw from where Harry lived, in this house, with his wife and two sons.
Let me give you an idea of the very close proximity of the distances and the locations. Glenelg Beach, where the children came to swim that day. Over here is Collie Reserve, where certainly the Beaumonts were spotted playing. Harry Phipps's house was a very short walk straight down that road right next door to the church. And the bakery, well, that was just behind this building, barely 200 metres away, where the children were seen buying a pie with a £1 note for a man. So, Who was that man?
In his interview with Bill Hayes, Hayden said he remembered seeing 3 children talking to his father.
When they're talking to Harry, they go inside the house, you hear, they never come out.
But Harry Phipps was not a suspect at the time.
He didn't fit the profile that the police would have been looking for at the time.
He was a prominent businessman whose firm, Castalloy, in nearby Plympton, made metal castings for the car industry. In 1983, Harry was awarded the prestigious Australia Medal for Services to Industry. He was close to politicians, powerful, respected, connected.
Nobody's going to look at him, are they? This upstanding pillar of the community who's won all these awards, he knows all these important people. He's clearly not. They would have been looking for a paedophile, probably. And whoever's going to look at Harry.
Were you afraid of your father?
Terrified.
Have you ever known him to be violent?
Very violent, extremely.
You ever known him to carry firearms?
Yes. He never went anywhere without a pistol.
You know what sort of pistol it was?
38 police revolver.
To the outside world, Harry was charming, charismatic, funny. But behind closed doors, he was a dramatically different man.
What was his childhood like?
I'd say it was fucked up. His mother dressed him as a girl until he was 5 years of age, and he just carried it on. When my grandmother died, I found some of his clothing, and my mother came out and said, oh, you found out the secret at last. He admitted to me on many occasions that he had a straight-up fetish for women's clothing, and in particular, his mother made him little gowns of satin, and he acquired this fetish for satin.
He was a sexual deviant. He couldn't control himself when wearing satin or when he was around satin.
You actually saw him dressed like this?
Yeah.
Did you see signs of him having been sexually excited?
Yeah.
He said that he could recall as a small child lying in bed at night, and he would hear the sound of Harry coming down the hall and the swish of the satin.
He used to hear this swishing at night.
And he knew that Harry was coming to sexually abuse him. So he'd just wait for it. Now, you told me before, we had a conversation before, and you told me that your father had sexually abused you.
Yes, violently.
Okay, so full sexual intercourse?
Yep.
All right, how long did this abuse go on for, Hayden?
Until I was 14 years of age.
3 times a week for about 8 years, which I'm assuming Hayden got big enough to deck his father, and that's why it stopped.
And I became big enough and strong enough to protect myself. And one night he picked up a plate of food and slammed it in my mum's face, and the china plate broke and cut her face open. So I grabbed him by the hair and dragged him out in the passage and dropped him. And I just held him down by his shoulders and punched the shit out of him and said, don't you ever hit my mother again. You never hit my mother again.
What about you?
Never touched me again.
Hayden had his problems, obviously, but in relation to his telling of his own abuse at the hands of his father and the Beaumont Children connection, do you believe him to be believable
Yes.
and trustworthy?
Yes.
Why didn't he come forward years and years ago?
Who's going to believe him? You've got a father that's a very wealthy man. He was a millionaire, and he has influence. And he was a member of the Adelaide Club. Imagine the people he knew.
Harry Phipps lived until his 80s, dying in 2004. He was never investigated. 10 years later, Hayden, his son, died. A broken man.
Such a waste. I find the waste of human potential difficult, and in someone that I really loved. He was the love of my life.
Within weeks of this interview, Angela Fife also died. But in death, she and her ex-husband Hayden left behind damning testimony about his father, Harry Phipps.
Possibly the closest thing to evil I've ever met in my life.
Do you think he would have had it in him to kill 3 innocent children like that? Oh, easy. He wouldn't even think about it.
That's next.
I know this may not be easy, but I want to show you this image. Which one is he?
In the middle. Older.
But dressed impeccably and neatly and clean, respectable businessman. And you're of no doubt that's him. Not comfortable for you to see that man?
No.
Harry Phipps was Adelaide establishment. He had status and he had money. Harry had it all. But it wasn't enough. Harry was a predator. In 1979, near his Castaloy factory, the well-dressed businessman raped a 14-year-old girl. She has never publicly told her story before.
My best friend lived around the corner from behind Castaloy's, and I remember having my school uniform on, which back then was very short, as they were back then, and I ran to my friend's place. This would have been about 4 o'clock when I headed her place, and she only lived not even a 3-minute run to her place.
Linda stayed at her friend's for around 2 hours. On her way home, she encountered the man she's identified as Harry Phipps.
He basically just said, "Oh, hi, how are you? I've seen you around," which he did. I used to stand on the corner of Castaloy's, and I'd seen him a few times.
So you recognised him?
Yeah. He just walked me across the road and was just saying that, you know, you're a really pretty girl, I've seen you around, and I just went with him. I was more worried of getting in trouble from my father not being home on time than what this man was doing. There was nobody around. There was no cars around, there was no people around, there was no workers around. Everything had shut.
What sort of clothes was he wearing?
He had like dark grey pants on and shirt and tie, and smelled clean.
When you're accessing senses like smell, that is because you're taking yourself back to an event. So those kind of details actually make it more believable to me from a victim perspective that you know, she's got a very clear recollection and she knows who the offender was.
He was a smart, clean businessman.
Very, very. That's why I think he was a bit trusting too, because he didn't look, you know, like a monster. He didn't act like one.
What is he saying?
Sit down here, you know, you're a really pretty girl, and I've been, you know, I see you in the morning, so I know you're around, and I see you going to school and all of those sorts of things. And then he just became a little bit more forceful, and he just started doing things, and then he'd stop speaking. He did the raping, but started getting really slimy, really dirty talk and things like that, you know. Yeah.
I know that's not easy, so...
No.
When he was finished, Harry Phipps began blaming her.
He changed. It didn't matter that I was crying, or that my uniform was filthy, or that my legs were scraped, gravel rashed and things like that, or that I was bleeding. It didn't matter. It was almost like, see what you made me do now? You know, you got my pants dirty. You got my shirt, you got dirt on my shirt.
He said that?
Yeah, because it was all dusty. I was still more concerned about getting home before my dad did.
What did you fear in your father's personality if you had told him?
It was my fault. He would have hit me. He would have hit me, he would have kicked me. He would have said to me, you should have been there, it's your fault. Don't tell this, don't tell that. Yeah, that's what he would have done.
So you stayed quiet?
I had to.
Linda later sought counselling to cope with the trauma of Harry's attack. It would be years before she knew his name.
When did it dawn on you that you think you might have known who it was?
I was watching the news and Beaumont Children came up. My ears pricked up and I stood in front of the telly and I saw Castelloy. I said to my housemate now, I said, quick, this is where I used to live across the road. And then they brought up a picture of him and my stomach just dropped. 100%. That was him.
On the day the Beaumont children disappeared, they were last seen buying lunch with a £1 note at Wenzel's Bakery.
If you talk to anybody in the 60s that was a kid or an adult, that how much a pound note was, that was a wow factor. And Jane was given that pound note. You have her confidence.
Someone must have given it to them, and we know that Harry, because we have statements from a number of people, including the son, that Harry, if he wanted you to do something or disappear, he would give you a £1 note.
So it wasn't unusual for him to give out £1 notes as much as you want. Okay. But you don't remember him eating pies? I think he liked pies, didn't he?
Jane Beaumont kept her money in an off-white clip purse. Many years later, Harry's widow invited Stuart Mullins into the Glenelg home they'd shared. Stuart was investigating rumours about Harry and was shown around the house, including the basement.
But there on the shelf, there was a clip purse. And it looked out of place. It was in pristine condition, but it was out of place.
After leaving, Stuart contacted a colleague who told him of the potential significance of his discovery. The next day, Stuart rang Harry's widow.
And I said, I need to come back and have a look at something, which she said, that's fine. And so we went down to the basement and I said, look, you know, Jane Beaumont had a very similar purse to this. And she said, no. She said, I bought that at an op shop last week. And I said, well, what's it doing here? If you bought it at an op shop, what's it doing down here? But at that time, she said, I think you have to leave.
But that could have been the connection to the Beaumont children.
Yes, I've been reminded of that several times.
Yeah.
On the morning of Australia Day 1966, Harry's then 15-year-old son, Hayden, went to a part-time job at a nearby bowling alley.
What time did you get home? Between 12 and 12:30. You said you saw the kids. Yeah, I've seen them come in. Can you describe them to me now? The little kids, one's a little bit shorter than the rest, with short haircuts. I think they had towels. I think they had beach towels. Did you see them talking to Harry? Yeah. Did you hear what they were saying? No, we're too far away. How long had you seen them for? How long were you standing talking to Harry? Oh, only long enough until he took them inside. Well, he took them inside. And then after that, I came out of the cubby house and went inside to see if it was going on. And the front door was open. So I just assumed they left out the front door. Did you hear any noises or any screaming or any shouting? Or?
Nothing? Any gunshots?
Yeah, we had some gunshots go off, but Harry's always letting off gunshots. That means nothing.
You think it was all with the kids in the house? There was gunshots going on?
No, not in that place.
How many shots did you hear?
4.
Later, he saw his father loading what looked like surfboard covers into the boot of his car. He didn't find it unusual, as Harry often used them to carry his satin dresses.
And then he took off in the car?
Yeah, a big body.
Yeah, okay.
Believing the 3 children had already left, Hayden thought nothing of his father's behaviour then or in the days following. But what Harry and his big American car did next is even more baffling, even more suspicious.
The car was quite a new car. I don't know the brand other than it was what we would call in those days an American vehicle.
A Yank tank?
Yes. We were asked to dig a hole. It had to be done on the long weekend and finished by Sunday night. It was hot as heck, really hot. Occasionally come over to the hole and say, no, I want it deeper. And then he would just sit there and stare at us. And then he would drive away.
Australia Day 1966 and the days after are well remembered by David Harkin.
It was hot as heck, really hot. In fact, stinking hot.
He and his elder brother lived in North Plympton, close to the Castalloy factory. In their spare time, they earned money doing odd jobs, like the one a well-dressed man offered them that holiday weekend.
I was 15 at the time, Robin was 17. We were asked to dig a hole. It had to be done on the long weekend and finished by Sunday night.
The businessman offered good money, which was an added incentive for David's brother, who was saving for his first car.
That was the motivation for digging a hole, otherwise we'd be down the beach on Saturday and Sunday. We had to be there early in the morning, so we rode our bikes down. We still rode bikes in those days. Rode down to the factory. The gate was opened for us. The shovels were there. There was a fellow there waiting for us. He directed us to where to dig the hole and pretty much what dimensions he wanted. Approximately 2 yards long, a yard wide and about our height.
In metric, that's slightly under 2 metres long, 1 metre wide and 2 metres deep.
For some reason, it needed to be that shape and quite straight sides. He was quite insistent on that, and we just had to keep digging until he was satisfied. He would just sit there and stare at us. Occasionally come over to the hole and say, no, I want it deeper, and then just either sit there and watch us for a little while or drive off again. There was no pleasantries involved or thank you for your work or anything like that. He would just look at us.
David remembers being worried. The factory was shut at the weekend. If anything went wrong, no one was there.
And that was one of the thoughts that went through my mind, that if this thing caved in, no one would know because people couldn't see us. We finished. It was on the Sunday night. He came over and told us, that's it, get out of there. Gave us money. It was good money. I recall it was at least a £1 note each.
A crisp £1 note. Good money for 2 days' work.
We never thought anything of it other than that we dug a hole. There was nothing there to connect it. At that time, the children had gone missing. It was more that they hadn't come home.
When did it first occur to you that you might have actually dug a grave that day?
only a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And what made you think that?
Well, there was, I was sitting at home, we were having dinner, my wife and myself, and tonight had a documentary on it, and they named the Castorloy site as a potential site. They named the fellow from here as the owner of the site, as to being quite involved. And it was at that point that I said to my wife, wow, the hairs on the back are standing up, and as kids we dug a hole.
This dramatic new lead eventually prompted police to dig at the Castorloy factory. It was 2013. But for all the effort, nothing was found.
Unfortunately, as a result of this, the dig which we had today, there is no new information found relative to this investigation.
A small but critical error had led to a big mistake.
We were in the wrong area, and nothing else had changed. We definitely dug the hole. The date was right, the time of the year was right, and dimensions and everything else. We were in the wrong place.
In 2017, after we began reinvestigating the Beaumont case,
we were in the wrong place.
The mistake was discovered with the unearthing of this rare aerial photograph of the factory taken in the mid-60s. What it revealed is that the gate the police and the Harkin brothers had used as their landmark in 2013 was not there in 1966. The real gate was here.
This is actually our point of entry because there used to be a second gate here that the eyewitnesses described coming through. The car would have driven up that Phipps was in and parked in that area over there. And then they actually think that they dug the hole for him back here in this flat area. So clearly this is going to be our primary site of interest.
The photo had solved one part of the puzzle. But it would take this archaeological scientist and his team to provide the answer to the next. Could new technology pinpoint the exact place that the Harkin brothers had dug? The possible burial site of the Beaumont children? In January, in near 40-degree heat.
All right, Adelaide 37 at the moment and 41 later.
Archaeological scientist Ian Moffat and a small team from Flinders University began the painstaking task of testing the soil at the old Castorloy site.
What it's not going to show is bones. What it shows is an anomaly, something that's different. So we're looking for an area of ground that is different underneath than the surrounding of about the right size. In terms of this mystery, this is really cutting-edge technology. I don't know of anywhere else where this has been used before, especially in a forensic capacity.
The testing took 3 days.
We're going to take this back to the lab and put all of these results together into one big 3D model of the site.
It then took nearly 2 weeks for data to be analysed, both in Australia and overseas, and a profile of the soil where the Harkins said they had dug to be visually constructed. But when it was, what it showed was literally groundbreaking.
Hello, Xanthi.
Yeah.
The thing I'm really excited about is the features are about the right size, they're about the right shape, they're sitting at the right depth, and best of all, they're approximately in the area where the history from the site suggests that they should be.
Armed with this breakthrough, on Friday the 19th of January, Ian Moffat drove to present his findings to South Australian Police.
This is a really significant meeting. It's a huge finding. It's always difficult with geophysical data. It's an indirect indication of what's in the ground. So I don't want to jump to the conclusion that we've definitely found these bodies at this stage. But what's certainly been found is some disturbance in the soil that fits a description of the grave. And so I think that makes it very compelling.
Ian was joined by forensic criminologist Dr. Xanthi Mallet. Less than an hour later, they emerged with stunning news.
Really exciting. The police have taken over the investigation. They're very interested in the results that we've had, and they're moving forward to dig the site as soon as possible.
And you're of no doubt that Harry Phipps killed the Beaumont children.
I've no doubt that he was with the children on that day. I've no doubt that he was a pedophile. I've no doubt that he was a dangerous man when aroused. I've no doubt that on the day he was handling his satin clothing, and when he did that, he became sexually aroused, and into that walked 3 little children. Those are the things I'm sure of.
Last Friday marked the 52nd anniversary of the disappearance of Jane, Anna and Grant Beaumont. South Australian police have now marked out and secured a section of the cast alloy site, which is right behind me. That area is now a crime scene, and very soon, within a few days, as a matter of fact, a team of police and forensic specialists will begin digging. Only then will we know what really happened to the Beaumonts, or if the mystery remains. Earlier, I spoke to Detective Inspector Greg Hutchins from the South Australian Police Force. The site has now been declared a crime scene. What is the next step? Logistically, what happens?
We need to meet and discuss with a number of specialists, anthropologists, pathologists, specialist crime scene examiners, because there's clearly a number of possibilities that need to be considered, and what-ifs. What if they find a piece of clothing? What if they find rubbish? What if they find bones? All these things need to be considered and potentially can slow down the process considerably.
Just on a human level, as a detective looking at this case, serving, and the many past detectives who've been on this since the very beginning, how significant is this?
Absolutely huge. It'd be significant for the country if we could find out what happened to 3 Beaumont children, many, many years ago. The family have suffered considerably for a long, long time without any answers.
And joining me now is Dr. Xanthi Mallard, a forensic criminologist with the University of Newcastle and a member of our 7 News Investigates team for the past few months. Xanthi, you will be behind the fence line when the dig actually happens. Who else will be there and what will they be doing?
This is a full forensic investigation, so primarily police personnel with forensic experts to assist them. The main one being a forensic anthropologist who will be there to oversee any elements of human identification. So if any bones show up, for example, that's the expert that will help identify who that is.
But make no mistake, this is a major forensic investigation now.
Yes, the South Australia Police are very much taking this seriously, so this is a full forensic investigation. They'll be wearing their full personal protective equipment, as you would imagine at any other crime scene.
OK, Xanthi, thank you for that. And thank you for joining us tonight. You can keep up to date, of course, keep following this breaking story by watching 7 News over the coming days. I'm Michael Usher. Thanks so much for your company. Have a great night.